Hi, mamas. I'm Isabel here at Mommy Circle, the place where we put the me back in mommy. And I'm so happy to be here today on our Wise Woman Wednesday with Barbara Hannelore. She has been such a wonderful influence on my life personally. And so I'm really eager to share her with you all today. And before we dive in, Barbara, will you just introduce yourself and let the mamas know a little bit about what you do?
Yes, and my love is working with reframing the menstrual cycle, although it's so much more than that. It's about our body image, it's about our self-care, it's about our self-esteem and our creative practice. There's this rhythm moving within us that we've been taught to ignore. And so it distances us from ourselves. And so I just love to pull women back into this kind of love affair with our bodies that comes when we start being comfortable with our cycles. It helps us reconnect with nature too. And in fact, that's how I help women reconnect with their cycle, is by comparing it to the moon and kind of stepping into these rhythms of nature.
Yes, that is what I love about you, because we're not just talking about our bodies, we're talking about how we are part of this whole creation. And it feels there's a magicalness and something really, it starts to make sense once I learned how to really be in sync with my cycle and in sync with the cycle of the moon. Things started to click for me. And
I love how you say that it starts to make sense. And that's what I want for women, is instead of feeling disconnected, we start to realize we're connected to everything. And then it just kind of grows from there. And your whole life sort of readjusts around this different awareness that you have.
Yes. Yes. So Barbara, I took your book club. And it was so wonderful to be with you for 5 weeks live, and knowing that I had like one-on-one access to you. And so I'm really excited to let this group know about what you have available to them as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I would like that. And, it's getting dark here, which I wasn't quite thinking about, so I hope everybody can see it.
It is getting dark. The moon. Come on, moon. Oh, wait, it's a dark moon.
Here's my book. It's called The Moon and You, A Woman's Guide to an Easier Monthly Cycle. And I started this program almost 30 years ago. My program is called Women's Way Moon Cycles. And I wrote the book. I teach classes based on the book. The most basic one, like you said, is the book club, where we gather for 5 weeks by phone and we just get familiar with the book. We go through the 5 chapters of the book together. And then I have another women's class, another 5-week class also based on the book, called Womb Wisdom, where we go through the same book, but we go much deeper and we really spend time with the activities. We do creative activities, we do womb meditations, and each woman has a chance to develop these new practices and these new habits, because what we're learning is how to approach our whole month with our cycle in mind and to develop this rhythm that serves you.
Yeah, and what I really liked about what we did in these groups is you asked us to practice it in the moment with you. So you have to pause and take time out of our call to do these practices. And I know myself, and I know if that had just been homework, I might not have allowed myself to really sink in the way that
I'm the same way, and that's why I love getting on these calls. I loved having that 5-week book club with you, Isabel, and it's so special to do these live calls, and that's what I look forward to with the Womb Wisdom class as well. Now, I host the book club 2 or 3 times a year. I host the Womb Wisdom course a couple of times a year. The book club happens to start tomorrow.
Yes.
And, we're trying to kind of fit this in before the holidays, before Thanksgiving. The book club starts tomorrow for 5 weeks, so that's every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific. And they're recorded. So sometimes women can't make the calls, but you could still join, learn a lot. Like you said, even though the call isn't the same, and the recording isn't the same as the call, you can still learn a lot. And then Isabel and I are trying to figure out a time to schedule this, the Womb Wisdom course. We'd like to start as soon as possible, but our other member right now is in New Zealand.
Yep.
And so we're trying to figure out, we might even end up doing it in the evening, because that's New Zealand is like 20 hours later than we are. And
Yep.
so an evening would for us would be an afternoon for her, which I think she said would work. So Isabel and I would love to know, for those of you who are intrigued by this, it really is life changing. I know this from the women I've spoken to about it, and even the book club, and even more so the Womb Wisdom course. And so if you're interested in jumping in, we're going to have the link to the book club here.
Yep.
And then also, if you're interested in the Womb Wisdom course, we don't have the time set yet, so just please comment and you can help us figure out a time that'll work for you too.
Yes, that's right. Well, I'm feeling like the light is telling us, or the moon is telling us that it's time.
Try to turn on a lamp. Yeah, you can see my teeth, and that's about it. Okay, well, that's a little better.
There we go. Now we can see your
below. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so can you tell us a little bit, like some of the themes that you'll be going over in your next 5 weeks, the one that's not scheduled yet?
Yeah, the book has 5 chapters because I want women, it became very comprehensive. I started out to write a simple book, and then it became more comprehensive because I wanted to cover so much. And like I said, our menstrual cycle affects everything in our life. And so the first chapter is about what is a cycle, because the rhythms, the moon, we know that the moon has a rhythm all month long, and that the phases are very different one from each other, and yet they balance each other. And with our own menstrual time, we tend to call our period our cycle. We say, oh, I'm getting my cycle. But of course, when we think about it, we know it's a rhythm that goes on all month long. So the first chapter of the book is about establishing that and understanding the value of the different phases. And then we go into our inner life, because, a good part of our month is about stepping back from that frantic pace that we wish our culture expects us to carry on all the time. Stepping back, caring for ourselves, catching up with ourselves. We don't get a lot of help on knowing how to do that. I know you know that too, Isabel, and that's what you work with women so much. And so there's a whole chapter on that, which goes through a lot. There's also a chapter on caring for our body and our environment and taking care of ourselves that way, herbs, things like that. But then we get into cultures, which is, it's so helpful for us to know the cultural influences that have affected us since the day we were born. So we understand that the difficulties we have are not just individual difficulties, it's cultural. It's these messages we get. So I just want to validate women that, your struggles are not, there's nothing wrong with you. It's more the culture that is imposing these unrealistic expectations on you, and shame that should not be there. Yeah. And then we look at past cultures that have had a wonderful esteem for women and for women's special abilities, like the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
So we go through all these, and we also, the last chapter is about coming of age, and it's not so much for your daughter's coming of age, it's for you, and it's about going back to reconsider your own coming of age and giving yourself new messages. It's just magical.
Wonderful. So what kind of woman do you see participating in this?
Oh, wow. I think women who always feel behind because there's no rhythm to your month. And what we learn here is very quickly how to start planning ahead and realizing that you're not going to feel the same 2 weeks from now as you do now. So when you start to develop a rhythm for your month, then when you step back a little bit, you find you can make up for it later. And you not only feel better sort of physically and mentally, but you feel this esteem for yourself because you paid attention to your own needs and you sort of stood up for yourself. And it's a whole different feeling that starts to develop very quickly. And it's also relief, because you realize one thing is you can plan ahead a little bit of self-care time. The optimal time to do that. And so you can anticipate that. It's a great feeling. So so many women who just want more rhythm in their month and want to feel more connected to your body, to yourself, because this connection to nature goes so deep that it can help you find that connection to yourself and your source and your creative impulse that may be missing.
That is exactly what I wanted you to touch on, is this piece about the self-importance
Yeah.
that is involved in getting in touch with your cycle. And like how I opened, in Mommy Circle, we're all about putting the me back in mommy. So we're all about really making our own self-care and our self-knowledge rise to the surface of our lives, when so much of our culture tells us that moms need to put everyone else first. I'm on a mission to kind of shift that mindset. And so for me, in my own life, paying attention to my cycle and syncing with it has helped me remember that I am important. And the only way I can really support my kids and my husband and my loved ones is if I am supported from the inside out. And so this is really a lesson in doing that.
Yes, that's perfect. And when you realize the rhythms of nature are about balance, and they're there to help us be balanced. That's, nighttime is there so we can sleep. And there's certain parts of, our menstrual time is kind of like the dark time of the moon. It's there to help us catch up with ourselves. And we've been taught that acknowledging that our cycle affects us is a weakness. And so it takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of courage to step into this and be able to admit that my cycle affects me. And so I'm proud of women who step into this work. And it ripples out into your life. Oh, I want to say something else. It affects family harmony just beautifully.
Yes.
Beautifully and very quickly. Again, I've had clients who just tell me, whoa, my husband really gets this now. I'm able to explain it to him in a new way. And even this woman said, even our fights are different because they just understand each other in a different way. It's so wonderful.
Yes. I'm so excited to help you share and spread your message. So mommies, I really hope that you'll join us.
I hope so too. Thank you so much, Isabel, for inviting me on, and thank you for reminding me to try. I'm glad I had a lamp over there, because otherwise I would have had to run find one. I just forgot how dark it was getting. So this
I mean, even that, this will go live in the morning. But this is just a reminder that the light is starting to wane this time of year. We can see it. We can see how fast the light dimmed on your sweet face as we were speaking. And all of those are reminders that we can start to come inward and start to take more of an in-breath. And we live in a place where we can turn on a light. And often it's so easy to do that, but that doesn't mean that we always should. So it's a reminder to me that I can start going to bed earlier this time of month and this time of the moon, and I can start really taking extra care of myself during my menstrual cycle, during my the period where I start to bleed. So it's just a good reminder that we don't have to, because we have these artificial light sources, but
you're reminding me, I do want to say one more thing, Isabel, which is that at this time of year, the year is winding down into the darkest time of the year. And so then when we have the darkest time of the moon, that it's also the darkest time of the year. And then when we have our menstrual time, that's another dark time. So, but especially in this part of the year, which I love so much, where the light is waning, it's the optimal time to really pay attention to pulling in. And so I feel like this is kind of a precious time to hold these classes. And the women who may be able to be involved, you can start you can go into the holidays with some extra sort of self-care in mind and practices in mind. And then you can go into the new year with this whole different way of approaching your life, basically.
Yes. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for coming on here with me and sharing your wisdom. Is there anything else that you want to say to the mamas before we hop off?
Well, I do not think so. We were talking about new moon, and today is the new moon. So I love encouraging women to follow the moon's rhythm as well, and we have different practices around that we talk about also.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. So if you have questions, mommies, you can add them into the comments, and Barbara is happy to come back and answer them, whether they're about how you can get in touch with her, questions about this course, or just, an excitement about this type of work that she's doing.
Yes.
We would really love to hear from you.
All is welcome. Yes.
Yes. And I will include the links to this course in the comments as well. So you can look for that there and sign up.
That's great.
Okay, mommies. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, Barbara.